I dropped out of college to raise my brother's son after his girlfriend disappeared. I was there for every fever, every homework assignment, every broken tooth. Last month, my brother got married. At the reception, he stood up and said, "This boy's mother was a mess. But my wife here. She raised him. I wasn't even mentioned." I walked out quietly, but later that night, I opened the folder with the DNA test that. My name is Hannah. I'm 31 now. I live in Rockford, Illinois. And I need to get something off my chest because I'm tired of people telling me I should move on, or forgive. I did the work. I raised a child that wasn't mine. And last month, the man who should have said thank you pretended like I didn't exist. So I'm telling this now. For me. Here's how it started. I was 19. I had just finished my first year of college in Michigan. It wasn't some fancy university, but I had a full scholarship, and it felt like my way out. I was studying early education, wanted to be a teacher. My plan was clear. Then my older brother Nate showed up in the middle of the night. I was in my dorm, studying for finals. He knocked on my door, looking like he hadn't slept in days. He was holding a baby. "I need help," he said. "Sierra left? She walked out of the hospital and never came back. I don't know what to do." I didn't even ask questions. I packed a bag, left a voicemail for my advisor, and went home with him. That was the end of college. Nate was always the charming one. The kind of guy who got away with everything. He was 3 years older than me, good-looking, always knew what to say. Girls fell for him. Teachers gave him passes. Our mom? She adored him, even when he got in trouble. Sierra was one of those girls. She was kind of a mystery. Pretty, but always looked like she wasn't fully there. She'd disappear for days, come back acting like nothing happened. I never liked her, but she was pregnant, and Nate was convinced she'd settle down. She didn't. She gave birth to a baby boy, Milo, and then vanished. I thought Nate would step up. He didn't. He said he would. He tried for maybe 3 weeks. But then he started staying out late again. Said he needed space. That he was too young to be tied down. So I stepped in. I took care of Milo. Every night feeding. Every diaper. Every fever. Every time he cried so hard he couldn't breathe, it was me holding him. Me singing to him. Me rocking him to sleep. Nate would show up now and then with diapers or fast food. He'd take Milo for pictures and post them on Facebook with captions like, "Being a dad is the best thing that ever happened to me." Then he'd disappear again for a week. When Milo was 2, I stopped waiting for Nate to come home. I signed him up for daycare. Got a job at a local grocery store. Moved into a small apartment with our mom. I started calling myself his aunt in public because it was easier than explaining the whole story. When Milo was 3, our mom died. She had lung issues, then a stroke. It was sudden. Nate came back for the funeral. He cried and promised to do better. Said we'd raise Milo together. 2 months later, he was gone again. From that point on, it was just me. Years passed. I worked every job I could get. Waitressing, retail, part-time at the library. Whatever paid. I learned how to stretch groceries for 2 weeks. I learned how to fill out every form for public assistance, Medicaid, school vouchers. Milo grew up healthy, happy, smart. He called me Hanny at first, then Auntie Hannah. Then sometimes just Mom. I never corrected him. When he was 7, I found out his school was holding a Mom's Day breakfast. He made a card for me. It had a stick figure with curly brown hair and said, "I love you, Mommy Hannah." I cried in the car. When Milo was 9, Nate came back. He had a job at a local auto parts place. Said he was clean, sober, ready to be a dad again. He had a new girlfriend, Michelle. She was soft-spoken, wore glasses, worked in HR. I didn't know what to think, but she seemed fine. They started taking Milo on weekends. He liked Michelle. She let him stay up late and made waffles with whipped cream. I told myself it was good for him. Then one day, Nate said he and Michelle were getting married. I said congrats. He said they wanted full custody of Milo. I thought I misheard. "You're kidding, right?" I asked. "No," he said. "It's time he lives with his real parents. Michelle and I can give him structure. Stability." I felt like I'd been kicked in the chest. "You haven't raised him, Nate," I said. "You've been gone more than you've been here. That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is you disappearing for years while I did everything." He told me I was being emotional and clinging to a child that isn't even mine. I should have lawyered up right then. But I didn't want Milo caught in a custody war. So I agreed to share time. 1 week with me, 1 with them. Then came the wedding. They asked Milo to be the ring bearer. I helped him pick his suit. Practiced his speech with him. Drove him to rehearsals. At the reception, I sat near the back. I didn't care about the flowers or the food. I was there for Milo. Nate stood up with a microphone. He made jokes, thanked guests, kissed Michelle. Then he said it. I just want to say something about my boy. Milo's had a rough start. His mother, well, she couldn't be here. But I got lucky. Because Michelle stepped up. She raised him. She gave him a mother's love. People clapped. Some even stood. I sat there frozen. I thought maybe he'd follow up with something about me. Maybe even just a thank you to my sister who helped out. Nothing. He didn't even say my name. I didn't cause a scene. I just stood up, walked out, got in my car, and drove home. When I got there, I opened my nightstand drawer and pulled out a folder I'd hidden for years. Inside was a DNA test. Back when Milo was a baby, I had questions. Sierra had been with other people. There were rumors. Nate once said she might have cheated, but then he brushed it off. Still, something always bugged me. So I swabbed Milo's cheek. Then I took one of Nate's old toothbrushes and sent the samples to a lab. The results? 0% match. Nate wasn't Milo's father. I never told anyone. What would it change? Nate was never around anyway. I was the one doing the work. And I didn't want Milo growing up feeling abandoned by 2 parents. But now, things were different. Now, Nate was claiming credit. Calling Michelle the real mom. Trying to erase me. So I sent copies of the test to Nate and Michelle. No words. Just the results. Nate didn't call me. Didn't text. But his lawyer did. I filed for guardianship. I had years of records. Photos. Proof. I built a case. And I won. Not full custody, but I became Milo's legal guardian. Nate had visitation, but only with supervision for now. Michelle didn't speak to me at the hearings. She looked through me like I was invisible. I didn't care. Milo came home to me. And then something happened I didn't expect. Sierra, the bio mom who vanished, reached out. She said she was in Indiana. Sober. Working at a diner. She wanted to make things right. I was cautious. But I asked her one thing. Who is Milo's biological father? There was a long pause. Then she gave me a name. A man who lived right here in Rockford. I ordered another DNA test. And this one? It changed everything. The name Sierra gave me was Derek Barnes. I recognized it right away. He went to the same high school as me and Nate. He was 2 years older. Quiet guy, stayed out of trouble, kind of kept to himself. I remembered him working at a gas station after school. I hadn't heard his name in years. I did some digging and found out he still lived in Rockford, about 15 minutes from me. He ran a small auto repair shop. Married, no kids. Never left town. I didn't contact him right away. First, I did the same thing I did years ago. I swabbed Milo. I drove to Derek's shop one afternoon, pretended I needed an oil change. While I waited, I grabbed a coffee cup he'd left on the counter. Slipped it into a plastic bag. I know it wasn't right, but I didn't care anymore. I sent it in for testing. 10 days later, the results came back. 99.99% match. Derek Barnes was Milo's biological father. I sat with that information for 2 days. I didn't sleep. I kept watching Milo, trying to imagine telling him something that would blow up his world. I didn't want to hurt him. But he deserved the truth. So I told him. We sat on the couch. I kept it simple. I told him I loved him. That Nate wasn't his real dad. That his real dad was someone else. A man who lived nearby. He got quiet. Real quiet. Then he said something that broke my heart. So I don't belong to anyone? I grabbed his hands. You belong to me, I said. You always have. He nodded, but I could tell something inside him was shaken. Then he asked, does he want to meet me? I didn't know. But I said I'd find out. I went back to Derek's shop the next day. Waited until he was alone. I told him who I was. Then I told him about Milo. He turned white. I always wondered, he said. Sierra, she disappeared. She never told me she was pregnant. I showed him the test results. His hands were shaking. He didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he said, can I see him? I told him I'd think about it. But first, I needed to talk to Nate. I showed up at his apartment with a copy of the new DNA test. He looked annoyed to see me. Michelle wasn't there. I sat across from him at the kitchen table and slid the paper toward him. He read it. Didn't say a word. Then he stood up, poured himself a drink, and said, "So I was just the idiot who raised another man's kid." I almost laughed. Raised? You mean dropped off every chance you got? Skipped birthdays? Moved out when he was 3? He slammed his glass on the counter. Don't act like you're some saint. You didn't tell me for 11 years. You didn't ask Nate. You didn't even show up. You were too busy partying and chasing women. He stared at me, then said, "You always thought you were better than me. But you're not. You're just bitter. You couldn't make anything of your life, so you clung to a kid that wasn't even yours. That's when I lost it." "No," I said. "I made a life. I gave him one. You were just a name on a birth certificate." Then I walked out. 2 days later, Michelle showed up at my apartment. She looked different. Pale, tense. She asked to speak to me alone. She sat down at my table and said, "I didn't know. About the DNA. About how much you did for him. I thought Nate raised him." I didn't say anything. She looked me in the eye and said, "I don't want to be involved in this mess. I care about Milo, but I'm not trying to take him away from you." That surprised me. Then she told me something else. "Nate's planning to fight the guardianship. He's mad about the test. He thinks if he can get Sierra to sign something, he can cut you out legally." I thanked her for the warning. She left. I stood there for a long time, thinking. That night, I called Derek and asked him to meet Milo. We met at a park. Milo was nervous. So was Derek. But when they sat down, something strange happened. They clicked. They talked about cars, music, and favorite foods. Milo asked if he liked video games. Derek said he used to, and Milo offered to show him his Nintendo Switch. It wasn't magical. It was awkward at times. But it was real. On the way home, Milo said, "He's quiet. But he's nice." Then he asked if he could see him again. I said yes. Things should have settled down after that. But they didn't. Because 2 weeks later, I got a letter from Nate's lawyer. Petition to terminate guardianship. He was coming for custody. Again. Even with the DNA test. Even after everything. And this time? He wasn't just going after Milo. He was going after me, too. The petition from Nate's lawyer hit me like a truck. I opened it in the kitchen while Milo was watching TV in the next room. My hands were shaking as I flipped through it. They weren't just asking to end my guardianship. They were accusing me of parental alienation. Claiming I poisoned Milo against Nate. That I withheld contact. That I manipulated him into thinking I was his mother. It was complete garbage. But there was one part that really caught me off guard. They were calling Sierra as a witness. I hadn't heard from her since she told me Derek was the real father. I called her that night. She answered on the first ring. "You're testifying for Nate?" I asked. She sighed. "He found me. Said you were trying to erase him from Milo's life. He offered me money to show up in court and say he's been a consistent father figure. You and I both know that's a lie." She didn't answer at first. Then she said, "I owe you, Hannah. I know that. I don't want to mess this up." "Then don't lie for him. Just tell the truth." She was quiet for a while. "Okay," she finally said. "I'll do the right thing." I didn't know if I believed her. Meanwhile, Derek and Milo were slowly building something. Derek started showing up once a week to hang out. He helped Milo fix his bike, brought him small tools from his shop. They'd sit on the porch and talk for hours. It was strange, but good. Milo was calmer. Happier. I still had full physical custody. Derek didn't ask for more. He said he wasn't trying to take over. He just wanted to know his son. But once word got around that Derek was Milo's father, something changed. People started asking questions. And then one day, CPS showed up at my door. The visit wasn't aggressive. The woman was polite, calm. Said they received an anonymous tip about neglect and inappropriate living conditions. My apartment was spotless. Milo was fed, clothed, and doing well in school. But it still shook me. After they left, I called my lawyer. He said, "This is textbook retaliation. Nate's trying to make you look unfit right before court." I told him about the CPS visit, the witness list, everything. He said, "We're going to need every shred of documentation. Texts, photos, school records, testimonies. Especially from people who saw you raising that boy alone." So I got to work. I reached out to everyone. Milo's old teachers, neighbors, even the pediatrician who saw him from birth. They all agreed to write statements. Some were furious when they heard what Nate was trying to do. One of Milo's third-grade teachers wrote a letter that brought me to tears. She said I was the most present, devoted parent she'd ever worked with. Said Milo only ever spoke about me with love. But even with all that, I knew the court would want more. They'd want to hear from Milo. I didn't want to put him on the stand. But I couldn't protect him from this anymore. Then something happened I never expected. Michelle showed up again. Alone. This time, she had a small manila envelope. I found this in Nate's drawer, she said. You need to see it. She handed it to me and left. Inside the envelope were printed screenshots. Texts between Nate and someone named Travis. Travis was offering to make the CPS complaint stick if Nate gave him a few $100 and wrote the complaint for him. There it was. In writing. Nate paid someone to file a false CPS report against me. My hands were shaking as I read it. This was more than a custody battle now. This was war. I gave the envelope to my lawyer the next morning. He nearly dropped his coffee. This is gold, he said. If the judge sees this, it could destroy Nate's entire case. I asked. Could it get him arrested? He said. If we push for it, yes. I wasn't sure if I wanted that. But part of me, maybe I did. Court day was coming. Milo was nervous. I kept him out of most of it, but he could feel the tension. He stopped eating much. Started having nightmares. So I sat him down and told him, You're not in trouble. And none of this is your fault. You don't have to speak unless the judge asks. He looked at me with red eyes and said, I don't want to live with Nate. That's when I knew, no matter what happened, I had to fight like hell. For him. The day before the hearing, I got a call from Sierra. She was crying. Nate threatened me, she said. He said if I didn't testify, he'd tell Derek I used to work as an escort. My stomach dropped. I don't care if people judge me, she said. But Derek? He'll never let me near Milo if he knows. I can't lose that chance. I paused. Then I said, Sierra, I'll talk to Derek. Just tell the truth tomorrow. That's all I need. What she didn't know was, Derek already knew. He told me months ago. Said Sierra came into his shop once, desperate for cash, years back. He'd figured it out. But he never judged her. Said everyone makes mistakes. I told him what Nate was threatening. He got quiet, then said, He's done. I didn't know what he meant at the time. But I found out the next day, when Derek showed up at court with something new. A voicemail. From Nate. Threatening Sierra. Offering money. Calling her names. Bragging about how he could bury me in court. He played it for my lawyer. And that changed everything. Court was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a rainy Thursday morning. I didn't sleep the night before. Neither did Milo. I let him stay home from school. I told the judge he didn't have to be in the courtroom unless they asked him. He wanted to come anyway. He said, I want them to see me. I want them to see who they're fighting over. He wore the suit I got him for Nate's wedding. The same one I almost threw out after that speech. But he looked sharp. Strong. I held his hand in the waiting room while we waited for the bailiff to call us in. Nate came in 10 minutes late. No apology. Wearing a designer blazer like he thought this was a job interview. Michelle wasn't with him. Sierra showed up. Quiet, head down, but she came. She wouldn't look at Nate. Derek stood tall. He brought copies of the voicemail and the envelope Michelle gave us. He didn't say much, but he didn't have to. He looked like a man ready to burn the whole thing down if needed. The judge was a woman in her 60s. Sharp, no nonsense. She glanced through the file before calling everyone forward. Then it began. Nate's lawyer made the usual speech. My client only recently learned that he was not the biological father. He has deep emotional ties to the child. He and his wife have provided a stable home. Miss Hannah kept this truth hidden for over a decade. She created confusion and distance. She manipulated the situation and alienated the child from his father. I didn't say a word. Just kept my eyes on the judge. Then my lawyer stood. He went through everything. Photos. School reports. Letters. DNA tests. Medical records. Teacher statements. Then he played the voicemail. The whole room went still. The judge listened with her jaw tight. Nate's voice rang out in the courtroom. I don't care if she raised him. She's nobody. I'll pay you, just show up and say what I wrote. Tell the court she's unstable. CPS'll bury her once they read the complaint. Then came silence. Nate's face was stone. He didn't flinch. But his lawyer went pale. Then came the witnesses. Sierra was first. She looked scared but stood tall. I gave birth to Milo, she said. But I didn't raise him. I ran. I was a mess. Hannah did everything. She was there for him when no one else was. She gave up her life for him. I'll always regret what I did, but I won't lie and pretend Nate was there. He wasn't. She sat down. Didn't look back. Then Derek took the stand. I didn't know I had a son. If I had, things might have been different. But I'm not here to fight. I'm here because Hannah has been the only real parent Milo's had. I've seen the bond they have. I'm his father, yes. But she's his mother. In every way that counts. Then, they asked if Milo wanted to speak. He said yes. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, walked to the front. He didn't cry. He didn't stutter. He looked straight at the judge and said, My aunt raised me. But I call her Mom. Because she earned it. My dad. I mean Nate, he was never really there. He'd come and go. But she never left. She was there for everything. She's my real mom. Then he sat back down beside me and took my hand. The judge didn't even ask for a recess. She looked directly at Nate. Mr. Nolan, this court has reviewed your conduct, your lack of consistent parenting, the false CPS report, and the attempt to manipulate witnesses. You've shown a disturbing pattern of neglect and dishonesty. She turned to me. Ms. Hannah, the court finds you have acted in the best interest of the child from day one. You are awarded full legal and physical custody of Milo. The birth certificate will be amended to reflect the biological father. Visitation for Mr. Nolan is hereby suspended pending further psychological review. I couldn't breathe. Then the judge turned back to Nate. This court will also be forwarding the voicemail and testimony regarding the CPS fraud to the state's attorney for review. Nate's eyes finally widened. It got worse for him. 2 weeks later, he was arrested for filing a false CPS report and witness tampering. The guy he paid, Travis, flipped on him to avoid charges. Nate was charged with felony fraud, obstruction, and endangering a minor's welfare. Michelle filed for divorce 2 days after that. She never showed up in court again. As for Sierra, she stayed in town. She didn't try to be a mom, but she came around. Small steps. Milo wasn't ready for more, but I respected her effort. She was clean. She was trying. And for now, that was enough. Derek and I talked. He came over once a week. Took Milo to the park, to movies. Never overstepped. Just showed up. After a while, we started talking more. About parenting. Life. Pain. Choices. He told me once. You didn't have to raise a child that wasn't yours. But you did. And now he's yours in every way that matters. And me? I'm back in school. Online, slow pace, but I'm working toward that teaching degree again. Milo's 13 now. He's taller than me. Still calls me Mom. Sometimes I catch him staring at old photos. I asked him once if he missed Nate. He shrugged. I don't miss people who leave me. That hit hard. But he smiled and added, I'm glad the court picked the right mom. So yeah? I gave up a lot. Years of my life. Friendships. My 20s. But in return, I got my son. And the people who tried to erase me? They got exactly what they deserved. Every last one of them.